The fentanyl crisis is one of the most urgent security issues in North America today. In 2023 alone, over 74,000 people in the United States died from overdose, most of them related to fentanyl, that is a synthetic opioid that is up to 40 times stronger than heroin. This drug is produced in clandestine laboratories across Mexico, using chemical precursors from China and India. Then it's smuggled into the United States, especially through border crossings in California and Arizona. Because the United States and Mexico share 3,145 kilometer borders, this region has become a key route for transnational crime, fueling violence, corruption, and political tensions.
How did the conflict begin? The roots of the crisis go back to the 1990s during the opioid epidemic in the US. Pharmaceutical companies aggressively marketed opioids like OxyContin, leading to widespread addiction. As prescriptions became harder to get, many turned to heroin. By 2013, fentanyl began to take over the market. Mexican cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel, saw an opportunity. They started importing precursors from Asia and producing fentanyl cheaply and in large quantities. This created a deadly supply chain driven by the high demand in the US, the criminal innovation, the corruption and weak institutions in Mexico, and different policy goals, where the US focuses on enforcement and Mexico emphasizes in prevention.
Several global issues have made this crisis worse. First, transnational organized crime. Powerful cartels operate through global networks and exploit weak law enforcement. Second, corruption. Many institutions in Mexico, including police and customs, are vulnerable, allowing cartels to act freely. Third, migration. Violence and instability push people to flee, increasing pressure at the United States border. Fourth, economic inequality. Poverty and lack of opportunity in rural Mexico drive people to join the drug trade. And finally, climate change. Prolonged droughts and environmental stress make farming unsustainable, pushing many towards cartel activity just to survive.
In the actuality, fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 44. The DA has seized enough fentanyl to kill more than 119 million people in the last year. In response to this situation, the United States has labeled Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, has imposed sanctions like the 25% tariffs, and even proposed sending military forces into Mexico, a move that was firmly rejected. Meanwhile, to attack this problem, Mexico has deployed 10,000 troops to its northern border, has captured cartel leaders, and has seized laboratories.
For the main actors involved, we have the governments. In the US, it's the DA, the DHS, the CBP, and the president lead law enforcement and police efforts. In Mexico, it's the Sedena, the Attorney General's office, and President Claudia Sheinbaum are in charge of extraditions and military operations. For international organizations, we have the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, and the WHO help guide the public health responses and drug monitoring. For the criminal groups, we have mainly the Sinaloa cartel and the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, that they control much of the fentanyl production and trafficking. And from the NGOs, we have the Family Against Fentanyl in the US, Doctors Without Borders, and Mexico Unido contra la Delincuencia, advocate for policy reform and support affected communities.
Some of the consequences of this conflict are economic. The US lost an estimate 2.7 trillion in 2023 alone from health costs, productivity losses, and law enforcement. Tariffs have strained trade, especially in sectors like agriculture and car industry. In Mexico, violence has scared away investors, collapsed local economies, and weakened tourism. Political. The crisis has become a hot button issue in US elections, justifying border policies. US and Mexico relations have been strained by threats of military interventions and blame over fentanyl production.
For the social, in the US, families are devastated by overdose deaths and communities face addiction, homeless, and incarceration. In Mexico, cartel-controlled regions suffer from violence, extortion, and forced recruitment, especially of young people. For the environmental, drug labs dump toxic waste into rivers and soil, harming the ecosystems. Climate change makes rural communities more vulnerable, increasing cartel influence.
In 2022, around 800,000 people were arrested in the US border because they were trying to immigrate to the US. When they were asked what was the main reason why they were leaving Mexico, they answered that because of the violence that was generated by the organized crime. At the migrant shelter, we had the opportunity to meet a young man that came from Honduras. He told us that he had to leave his house because he was robbed and assaulted multiple times in his neighborhood. This data and the testimony are correlated because it shows how violence forces people to leave their house and their neighborhoods to try to seek for a more peaceful life.
To attack this conflict, there has been international responses. These one are: the Mexico-US Bicentennial Framework promotes cooperation on health and security. The UN Synthetic Drug Strategy helps coordinate a global response. The US-China talks in 2023 lead to renewed cooperation on precursor chemicals. The North American Drug Dialogue allows Canada, Mexico, and the US to share strategies and data.
For the geopolitical impact, this crisis has created major diplomatic tension. The US uses the issue to apply economic and political pressure on Mexico, such as the recent increase in tariffs. Mexico rejects foreign intervention and insists on sovereignty. And the US and Mexico blame each other, turning the health crisis into a political rivalry. Meanwhile, cartels exploit legal trade routes, and rural Mexican economies depend on them, depending instability.
This situation reflects the theory of realism and liberalism in international relations. In the case of the United States, they have imposed tariffs to Mexico and have pushed for stronger enforcement to protect its population, like, for example, the new migrant policies that they are taking. While on the other hand, Mexico has tried to cooperate with the United States to try to look for a solution. For example, President Claudia Sheinbaum recently sent 10,000 troops to the northern border to try to stop the traffic of fentanyl and stop illegal migration. To conclude, in order to find a solution for this conflict, there should be more diplomacy, which means that the United States and Mexico's government should cooperate more. There should be economic help from part of the Mexican government investing in rural areas so that the neighborhood, that the kids don't get to the organized crime.
And also to have public health, which means increasing the free addiction treatments or the access to the naloxone, and focus on security to create international teams to stop chemical trafficking and dismantle cartels.